Okay, good morning, everyone. As I said last week, thank you very much for attending the session. I really appreciate it. Some of you, I know you from the faculty, from the university. The rest of you, I do not know you, but anyway, it's a real pleasure to have everyone here today. So today we will follow more or less the same structure as last week. We will have around 45 minutes of explanation, let's say, and then we will have a brief time for questions or discussion. So and today, as I see on your names, I think the majority of us, the vast majority of us, we are from Spain. So as I said last week, this kind of issues regarding society inclusion, social inclusion are really local normally, but at the same time they share common principles and common situations. So I will try to make it in a brief approach. So all of you can be identified and this could be useful for you for you all. Again, sorry for my voice. I'm not still recovered from my sore throat, so maybe I have to stop to drink water or whatever. So I will share my screen as I did last week. So I think you may be seeing it now, right? Okay. Okay, so let's start. I would like to start like last week, explaining you that again, inclusion, diversity, disability are really, really broad topics. So we could be here discussing this for hours, for days, in degrees, in masters. So I chose to take an digital approach to focus on what digital technology, on what technology can offer to solve these inclusion problems. Also, I added things related to workspaces, to digital and educational spaces, so all of us can find some common points to take note. So our model today, the title is Digital Technology, Technology in the Service of, this is a mistake, Digital Technology in the Service of Inclusion, Skills and Tools. So to start, I would like all of us to reflect for a minute in which do we think that are the most important competencies to be an inclusive person, to be an inclusive teacher in the case of my students in primary education, to be an inclusive colleague at work. So this could be again a discussion for hours. So I decided to choose some kind of common competencies that we can find really useful when trying to make our spaces more inclusive, more respectful, and more diverse. So in the first competence, we have cultural awareness and sensitivity. Maybe for us, it's something really obvious because, of course, we are all enrolled in this course and we are discussing about about inclusion, about disability, about the diversity. But not for everyone, these topics or these issues are as much as discussed as we normally reflect about them. So not for everyone, not everyone is aware of the importance of having these inclusive workspaces, of having these respectful meetings, these respectful educational spaces, classroom. So it's really important to have these kind of initiatives as Cloud Earth Inspiring the Minds project, because we can make people to think about this, we can make people to reflect about this, and we can at least raise this awareness and sensitivity. So if we see, if you have a look to my screen, we can see that key skills include openness to new perspectives, respect for traditions and customs of others, which is really, really important, and also the ability to communicate effectively with people from diverse backgrounds. For instance, we outline, seek and learn about the richness of cultural present in society, recognizing and combating prejudices and stereotypes that can limit inclusion, and adapt one's communication and behavior to make it more respectful and inclusive. So these are like little actions or tiny actions that can make the difference and can be really, really important to make our spaces more inclusive and more respectful. So just to think or just to reflect and just to respect other people's traditions, other people's costumes, other people festivities. So it's really important to work better for a better world, of course. So in terms of the second competence is really, really related to the first one, that would be effective communication and empathy. So I think that nowadays with the big race of social media and digital communication using WhatsApp, Facebook, Telegram, I think that this empathy, this personal empathy, doesn't have the same importance as sometimes or some years before, because nowadays with workspaces, teleworking workspaces, or even digitalized workspaces, I think that the human contact, it's not the same as some years before, or at least it's not the same as before the pandemic, COVID-19 before. So we need again to reflect, and we need again to outline the importance of this communication and empathy, because just listening to the other people, just listening to to each problem or whatever situation they may have, it's really important to work for this better workspace, for this better classroom at school, or for this better teamwork at the university, for instance, in the case of my students. So we can outline that being empathetic, putting oneself in the other person's shoes, helps to build bonds of trust and mutual understanding, which are key elements in building a more open and inclusive society. That may seem really, really obvious, but I think that nowadays it's really important again to outline the importance of effective communication and empathy. Then I think that this competency is really, really important because it's directly related to how we leader a teamwork, how we leader a classroom of 25 children for my students at the university, how we even leader a group of friends. How do we do this without being like really without being kind of cruel, without being like this disgusting boss that we may see in movies, in films. So the solution to this question is to be an inclusive leader, specifically to take an inclusive leadership approach. So how do we do this inclusive leadership approach? So sorry, the phone is ringing. Give me just a second. Sorry. Sorry, please forgive me because I have like this landline at home, and sometimes this disgusting announcement of telephone companies keep calling in this non right moment. So sorry, forgive me for that, and I'm keep going. So the first thing we need to keep in mind to be an inclusive leader, we have to have this strategic vision. So how do we do this? So inclusive leaders have a clear vision on how to build a more just and equal society, and know how to mobilize others to achieve that goal. Then we have the importance of the empowerment. They empower and give voice to members of marginalized groups, recognizing and harnessing their unique strengths. And then, of course, they have the power to make right decision making. They adopt a collaborative decision-making approach where diverse perspectives are heard and valued before consensus is reached. So these 3 points outline having an strategic vision. That means that you need to know how is your teamwork, you need to know how is your classroom, which are their strengths, which are their weaknesses, and then we need to empower these weaknesses to turn them into strengths, into good things for our company, for our class at school. And then of course we need to have this power, decision making, because we are the leaders and we have the responsibility to decide for all our employees or our students. So combining these three aspects, these three approaches, we can become an inclusive leader. Think that if we have this decision making but we don't have this empowerment and this strategic vision, we aren't we won't be this inclusive leader. We will just be like the traditional leader, the traditional boss at work, the traditional principal at school. My students may know about this because we studied last year these models of traditional principals at school, in which they are like more than 20 years on their charge, and the things keep being the same than 20 years ago. So we need to combine these 3 points: strategic vision, empowerment, and decision making, to become an inclusive leader. Sorry, yeah. Then we have the competence number 4, diversity management. So what do we do this about? What do we do about this? So the first thing we need to know to manage this diversity is to recognize. That means identify and understand individual and group differences. Then we need to rate them, appreciate the richness that diversity brings to society. And finally, we need to manage this diversity. We need to manage this inclusive situation we may have at work or at school. So think that the first point we have is to recognize. That means identify. You have to look, you have to observe your colleagues at work, your mates at school, to identify and understand which are their individual differences or group differences. Then we need to rate them, we need to appreciate them, because they may have a different approach from you, and that could be really a really rich situation for your company or even for your school. So appreciate these differences to take advantage from that for your company or your school or your class. And then of course manage the situation to empower them, as I said before, and make them like more important in the company, not just a different group, not just a different person, but a person included in the big group. But at the same time, we still need to recognize and rate these differences. Maybe I think it's interesting to outline the case of our University of Alicante. We have the Center of Support for Students, in which I used to work 3 years ago. So the first thing we did when we came back from summer vacation, we did the study each year to recognize and to identify which and how many students we had with disability, with diversity, so we can start work with them. If we don't do this first step of recognizing the diversity, we won't be able to work with them. So keep in mind for your future at school or at companies that you may have to recognize different kinds of diversity of disabilities or mental health issues, or whatever kind of situation you may find in your company or in your school. So I would like to keep in mind this importance of the first step of recognition of diversity. Then we have the competence number 5, that would be, I think, a step ahead of the first one, of the last one, of competence number 4. So this would be promoting accessibility. So how do we do this? So the first thing in this pyramid you can see is the universal design. I don't explain that now. I will explain in a few minutes because it's really interesting. So keep in mind this. Then removal of barriers, of course, identifying and removing obstacles to participation. Please don't confuse barriers with architectonic barriers of the street or of the cars, of the elevators, of the stairs. also there are barriers, psychological barriers, mental barriers, or at least social barriers that can be a problem for these people with disability, with any kind of diversity. So barriers are not only architectonical barriers or street barriers, but also social barriers or mental barriers. Then we have, of course, really important, we will talk about this later too, assisted technology, implementing technological solutions to support people with disabilities. Keep in mind this point too, and I will explain it later. So the competence number 4, which I think it's really important and really easy to implement and to keep in mind, is collaboration and teamwork. So for my students at the university, we normally do some kind of teamwork in my courses, but I always say that teamwork is to work everybody at the same time for the same goal. Teamwork doesn't mean that you do one part, the other does the second part, the other does the third part, and then we mix everything together. That is not teamwork. Teamwork is to work everybody at the same time for the same goal, for the same aim, for the same project. So teamwork at companies, teamwork at schools, at classes, at even groups of friends doesn't mean to like mix their parts, but means to work everybody at the same time for the same goal. So teamwork fosters communication, empathy, and mutual respect, which is fundamental to creating inclusive environments. For instance, if we think when we were younger, or if we think when we were at primary school, maybe we can find this guy at our class that nobody wanted to play with him, nobody wanted to choose him for their teams, or any kind of sad situation that unfortunately still happens in our society. So teamwork and using these teams encourage these people to participate, to be more social, because they will finally find themselves in a group, being part of a group. So for everybody, for us, it's really important to be part of a group, of a real group with a same objective and goal. So using teamwork as a methodology or as a tool to accomplish this goal of having a really inclusive environment and atmosphere at a classroom, at the class, or at work. So now we've seen these six competencies, and now I would like you to keep in mind this digital technology and accessibility. So for my students at the university, we are normally working with, like these computers, they have their laptops, they have their phones, but if we in the future go to a school, if we go to a company, we may not have this, of course, super top technology that we may have at universities. We may have, let's say, a standard technology. So for us that we may not have any kind of disability, it may not be a problem. But if we have mates or colleagues with any kind of disability or diversity situation, it's really important to have this digital technology and accessibility. So how do we do this? The first thing to keep in mind is the inclusive design. The design of digital technologies must consider the needs of users with diverse abilities, ensuring an accessible and inclusive user experience. Then we have, of course, the assistive technology, which are like the one we see on the picture in the left side of the screen. We can see just this hand of, I think it may seem a kid or a teenager, using her, I think, wheelchair with this kind of joystick that it's obviously adapted to her disability or her situation, which I don't know because the picture is like just the hand and the joystick. So this is an example of assistive technology. And of course, it's really important, the third part, because we need to accomplish standards that are marked by the European Commission, by the European Union, or at least at national level in Spain. So we have laws about that, as I explained last week with the case of cyberbullying. So we need to keep that in mind to be, of course, legal with the law, and of course help people with this disability situation. Also really important to know that this inclusive design of the websites are a really, really important part. You may know the shop Zara in Spain. You know that, right? Zara. In English maybe zero or something like that. So yesterday I was kind of looking for some clothes to buy, and a notification, a banner just showed in my screen that was asking if I wanted to turn the web page into an inclusive web page. So Zara now has this button in which you can press, you can choose your kind of disability, for instance, blindness, for instance, physical disability or motor disability, and the web page automatically turns into an inclusive web page with these colors, with these big buttons in case of visual disability. So I think it's a really important point to keep in mind for Zara, for Inditex. So this would be that at least the most popular web page, for instance, the police web page, for instance, the major web page at any kind of town, or at least the public educational web page, need to have to really, really be an inclusive web page, of course, an inclusive society or an inclusive company. So here we get to this really important part, which is the universal design. In Spanish, we call it DUA, which would be Diseño Universal del Aprendizaje. In English, universal design would be universal learning design. So what is this? So universal design is an approach that seeks to create environments, products, and services that are accessible and inclusive for all people, regardless of their abilities. Its key principles include equitable usability, flexibility in use, simplicity, and minimal physical effort. So remember that some is before we were talking about the barriers, these architectural barriers or social barriers. So this would be, of course, only focusing on people with disability, that they need to remove these barriers. So the difference between this and the universal design is that universal design is thought for everybody had the same situation, the same atmosphere, the same teamwork space. So we don't have these barriers to remove because everybody works in a space that they can actually work there, no matter what kind of diversity issue they may have, no matter what kind of disability they may have. So that's also in terms of architectural designs, but also in terms of, as we see here, accessible web interfaces and assistive technologies that benefit society as a whole. If we click here, I think, are you seeing like now Google or still the presentation?
The
The
presentation.
presentation.
Okay, okay. So I think we will came back to the presentation, and then I will share with you so you can use the links because these links get you to the official European Commission webpage in terms of accessible web interfaces or assistive technology. So you can see that actually the European Commission considers this as a really important part of our society. So they have designs, specific designs and recommendations. So then technological assistance for people with disabilities. So imagine that you have a teammate, you have a colleague at school, you have a student at school that they have some kind of disability, because now we are more focusing on diversity in terms of disability, because unfortunately still our society have some barriers for them. So we are trying to face these issues in terms of companies, employers, employees, school, etc. So how do we help them? So the first thing we help them, I mean, to be a total empowered employee or a total empowered colleague at school. So that would be the first thing, technical aids, devices, equipment, and systems that enable people with disabilities to increase their autonomy and independence in activity of daily living. Then we will have supporting technologies, technological applications and solutions that facilitate accessibility and interaction with the environment. And then we will have to keep in mind this inclusive design, products and services designed from the outset so that they can be used by as many people as possible, regardless of their disabilities. So let's think. The first thing is technical aids that would be really related to supporting technologies. For instance, in the University of Alicante, I again put the example, we have this support student center in which if you are a student with any kind of physical or sensorial disability, you can ask for um, device to read the presentation on the screen. This device is called Elmo. Maybe you've heard about this, or I think that the acronym is in Spanish. I'm not remember this in English now, but I will send it then to Tamer so you can then have a look through it. So you can, of course, completely free, you can ask for it in this student support center. So you can carry this like device which records the presentation and reads the presentation in your ear, so you can see it, you can hear it, because you have blindness problems in this case. This will be a mix between technical aids but also supporting or assistive technology. For instance, again, the example of the web page of Zara, that would be again a really good example of supporting and technical aids, but not always we will have the help of the university, or not always we will be having like this big money that Zara has to make these web pages accessible. So how do we work with these people with disability if we don't have these resources? So there are some recommendations that, for instance, we can make our presentation without all these colors, because now my presentation wouldn't be inclusive. It's like a paradox. So we may be using these contrast colors, we may be using these workspaces without this kind of big windows in which the light can be reflecting, so people with any kind of blindness disability cannot properly see the screen. We won't be using like these really small laptops with really small screens in which we cannot properly see the content. So imagine a person with a sensorial disability. So there are just a few recommendations depending on the kind of disability you are facing that can be taken into account to make the environments more inclusive, more accessible. So keep in mind, please, from this part that we don't need, sorry, to have this big money to buy resources, to buy technical solutions, but we just need again to keep in mind that we may have disability diversity in our company, in our school, and we need to face them, we need to help them, and we need to include them. Depending on the case, we will be doing one thing or another, but at least we need to identify, as I was saying before, to identify and, of course, embrace this richness, this diversity. Then we also have inclusive digital platforms, are online spaces designed to ensure accessibility and participation for all people, regardless of their abilities or needs. So in this case, again, I have a link, maybe you then can have a look through it, in which there are a list of inclusive digital platforms for schools, and also can be used for companies, because are like digital platforms to organize teamwork, team group, or organize big number of students or employees that consider that take into account these disabilities. So they are inclusive digital platforms, are really interesting. So maybe then you can have a look through it, or maybe now if we have time when I finish the explanation. So now coming back to the things I was explaining last week, I remember that I finished like outlining the importance of having this educational and digital technology education at school. We cannot solve the work doing this. I remember that as I said, but we can work with young children to make them more aware of the importance of respecting this disability or respecting this diversity. So how do we do this? Well, with having a good and proper training in digital technology, with having a proper training in educational digital technology, because we are taking like this approach. So education and training in digital technology are fundamental to inclusion from an early age. It is crucial that all people, regardless of their abilities, have access to digital learning opportunities. This will enable them to acquire essential skills and knowledge to actively participate in this 21st century society, because as I said last week, our society is completely and totally digitalized. So without this digital education, unfortunately, we are not an active part of the society, at least in terms of work, in terms of money management, in terms of even friends or social atmosphere. So I'm going to have a, okay, we have time. So now I have some recommendations of how can we empower these vulnerable groups or these different groups at companies, at schools. So how do we do this? So the first thing, it's empowerment, of course, fostering the skills development and decision making of marginalized groups. Then, of course, inclusive access, ensure that digital technologies are accessible and usable by all. Then community participation, engage vulnerable groups in the design and implementation of technology solutions. And then digital education, as I was saying, to provide education and training in digital skills to marginalized groups, expanding their opportunities. So again, the first thing would be to recognize them, to listen to their needs, to listen to their situation and decision, and giving them the power to decide, to make important decisions. And then, of course, having this inclusive access and this community participation. Then have a look through it. It's really interesting, this part, because it's inclusion in the labor market through technology. So digital technology has opened up new opportunities for the inclusion of people with disabilities and vulnerable groups in the labor market, assistive tools, teleworking platforms, which is really important. And I think that here the pandemic in 2020 make an after and before and after point in terms of teleworking. You know that some years ago teleworking was just like a really awkward thing in some companies, and now actually is the most common telework approach, at least in the University of Alicante. We've taken this teleworking even for now, not for the students. You have to come to class, of course, but for the for the um, I I'm thinking of the acronym in English. Yeah, for the management and service personnel, more or less, people with administrative functions, people with money managed functions, which are not professors or lecturers. We call them PAS in Spanish. So they have this option of teleworking. Companies commit to diversity and innovation have implemented digital solutions that facilitate the integration of diverse workers, contributing to a more representative and productive workforce. So here I would like to outline one part. I don't know in the rest of the countries, but at least in Spain, it's true that companies receive a really good amount of money for hiring people with any kind of disability. You may have more or less the same situation in other countries, I guess. So it's not that they are given money, but they have like some sale then in the incomes and some kind of financial things they make to receive this money. So here, like everything in this life with money between this, sometimes this gets a bit dirty, let's say. So of course that the companies hire people with any kind of disability to make the workforce more productive and more rich, but at the same time it is true, at least in Spain, that some big companies hire people with disability just to receive these money incomes. So how do we solve this? So at least we can solve this taking into account the recommendation and what I was explaining before, to be like this inclusive leader, to have this recognitions schemes to give people with disability their part in the company, to give them the power to decide any kind of important points of the company, or in school, of course, because at schools we have exactly the same situation. There are um, some calls only open for teachers with any kind of disability. So again, that is not enough, because they may be hired, but if they are hired in a good school and then they are marginalized from the group without any disability, let's say, that is not okay for them. So we need again to include them, not just to integrate them, we need to include them in the big group, we need to include them in the daily life or any kind of company, of any kind of school. So let's see the social impact of inclusive digital technology. As I was explaining before, I just explained the inclusion in the labor market. So which is the impact of having this inclusive digital technology, like working in companies, in schools. So the first thing is the empowerment enables marginalized groups to participate and have a voice in society. The inclusion in the labor market facilitates employment opportunities for people with disability. Think, for instance, if you were in a wheelchair and you need to take the bus to go to work every day, to commute to work every day, that would be really difficult. But with options of teleworking, this situation gets a bit easier for people with any kind of motor disability. And then, of course, accessible education that provides learning tools adapted to various needs. That here, I think that governments play a big role in this kind of accessible education. In the case of Spain, the competencies in education are part of the regional government, in our case, La Consellería, which is called. So they have like the big part to ensure this accessible education, to ensure this inclusive education at schools. And then I think that it's some kind of conclusion towards a more inclusive society through technology. Digital technology has the power to transform people's life and create a more accessible and inclusive society if we use it properly, of course, as I was explaining last week, by applying the principles of universal design. Remember this methodology in which we design our educational contents, in which we design our workspace atmospheres or workspace teamwork. So following these principles of this methodology, we can empower vulnerable groups, facilitate education and training, and promote inclusion in the workplace. This inclusive approach to digital technology is key to build a world where all people can participate fully and enjoy a better quality of life. So using, of course, the good part, which is really big, of digital technology, and using other parts of such as universal design or universal learning design, or some of the recommendations I said in terms of company and teamwork, I think we will be working for this better society. We will be working for a more inclusive society. And the most important part for me, we will be working to have a real inclusive society, because the inclusion needs to be real and for everybody at the same time. Thank you very much for your attention. Here you have my mail in case you want to write me or something. I will, of course, share my presentation and the one I used last week with Tamer. So he will be sending you this presentation with all the links and all the information. Thank you very much. Now, if you have any questions or if you want to comment something, please feel free. Ainara and Alex, would you like to say something? They are my students.
You're the best.
Thank you. Carlota, would you like to say something? Hi, Carlota. Maybe Valentina, would you like to say something?
No, but thank you for your presentation. It was really like brilliant. And I was just I'm always a bit skeptical about the use of technology to to improve the inclusivity in society. But I know that if we are able to use the right technology, maybe they can really help. But at the same time, I think maybe we need also to like promote like we need to try to educate the students in how to use technology. I mean,
Uh-huh.
like having, for example, course in how to use this technology. So it's not
Yes.
just about how to use to to promote inclusivity, but also how to really use technology, practically. Yeah. So
Mhm.
I always a bit skeptical about that. But
Yes,
yeah, but I know
totally.
that it's yeah.
Actually, this training in how to use this inclusive digital technology only makes sense if it's with a training in how to use, like, let's say, a standard technology for the daily life use. So this is a situation we always discuss in class at university. Um, Now we fortunately have the help of European Commission with this DIGCOMP Edu framework. Maybe you've listened about this. So finally they are thinking about this. Finally they are making something about this. But still there is a big work still need to do in this case. So um, this training in how to use the proper technology, the correct technology, or at least how to be an active user and a good user of social media, like to know how to really use it in a positive way, not in a negative or toxic way. I think it's really important. So only with this and with training in a specific inclusive technology, we will be building a better world only with the combination of these two parts, let's say.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think that maybe we should start to educate students, but from the primary school to
Yes, yes,
use
yes,
that
yes.
because I mean, kids are also very exposed to social media from when they are very young. So probably we really need to think about that. And I think inclusivity is part of this, thinking. Yeah, but
Yes,
yeah,
yes, yes.
completely agree.
Especially thank you. This universal design methodology starts from the age of 2 years actually in schools. So here in Spain we have whole schools that act and that train using this methodology from really really early ages. So yeah, yeah, that's the path, that's the way to work this to build this better world, I think. Mhm.
And I don't know how it's going in Spain, but I have this experience from my son, who is 2.5 years old, and we have been like a meeting at the kindergarten last month, and it was about like how to prevent bullying or kind of this kind of problem, and they are very young, So I don't know how it is in Spain now, but I know that, for example, here in Tromsø, because I'm living in Tromsø,
Mm.
and in general in Norway, they start to organize this kind of meeting also with parents in the kindergarten. So yeah, it's true that probably they are following something like this kind of program. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Really interesting. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you to you.
Tamara, hi again. Yeah, I think we would be done for today.
Good, super. So sorry, I didn't manage to be with you all the session, but
Don't worry, don't worry.
I think I am sure that it's perfect as usual.
Mhm.
And we record this, so I will have the
Yes,
record and I will share it with all of you, with all the people who are
yes.
registered. Once I upload it to the YouTube, so it's 2 3 hours.
Mhm. I will send you the contents, the presentation too, so you can share it with them too.
Yeah, it will be perfect. So actually, if you share with me, is it okay for you to upload this module to our MOOC platform?
Yes, wonderful.
Perfect.
Yeah, that was the idea. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
perfect.
So if you can send me the content for this lecture and the lecture of
Okay.
last week,
Yeah.
and then I can upload this content to our MOOC platform and make it
Okay.
available for people who are not joining us, so they
Mm-hmm.
can watch it whenever they want.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Perfect.
So, super.
So thank you very much, Tamer and Valentina, for the organization of the courses, and thank you, of course, the students, my students, and the one I don't know. Thank you very much for being here, everybody, and take care, and let's work to have this better and inclusive society.
Good, super. Thanks a lot,
Thank you, Rosabel.
Isabella.
Bye.
And
Thank you.
maybe one comment for our colleagues and students here that we have on the 16th of April. So in
Oh,
month
yeah.
from now, we have Professor Asun also from Alicante University. She will
Mm-hmm.
give us a full course around sustainability and circular economy. So maybe you are
Mm-hmm.
interested to join. I will post the um, the Eventbrite for this event on our social media, and I will share it with you as well by email when I will share the record of today's session with you. So
Okay,
just
wonderful.
in case that anyone would like to join there.
Perfect.
Good. Thanks all. So
Bye.
bye bye. So thanks a lot, Isabella, for the help here. The consortium meeting was okay. I think everything is going well. So I just will follow up today at 5 o'clock or so with some information about the consortium meeting
Okay.
and uh, new tools that we created for the students in order to
Mm-hmm.
oversee some internship and training program with business sector. So I will share this with you, and maybe you can share it with our students, Alex and
Okay.
Inira here, and maybe they can also reshare this with their colleagues and friends.
Perfect.
Good, super. So,
Okay, thank you, Tamer. Let's
bye
keep
bye.
working. Let's keep in touch. Take
Yep.
care. Bye.
Bye bye.
Hugs.
Bye everyone.